Today I'm going to review Tank on Tank, a lock and load game that, as the back of the box tells you, can be learned in 5 minutes, can be played during a lunch break, or can be used to introduce a young tactician to wargaming. And I'm always looking for games such as this one, for entryway war games, because I work in education and I'm in contact with many passionate, motivated young individuals. I'm always hoping that I can, help them become passionate and motivated about playing war games so that my generation would not be the last one that plays tabletop war games where we actually move pieces around and roll dice instead of pressing buttons. So Tank on Tank is set in World War II, but there isn't much chrome, there isn't much setting really, it's pretty abstract. It is a tactical game, it introduces a couple of interesting ideas, and it definitely exemplifies well what the ABC Wargaming is. So, let's take a closer look and then we'll talk about it. I want to start by talking a little bit about the components because I've seen online that several people have complained about the quality of the components, so I want to give you a general overview so you can have more information when you decide whether or not you want to buy this game. You can factor that in. The first thing to talk about is the box. It's a small box, so it's a great advantage because you can bring the game with you. However, it is an incredibly, as you can see, fragile box. I think if you put it in a bag with pretty much anything, that box will not come back home alive. Then you have a player aid, which is printed on paper. It looks good, but it doesn't have much information, and strangely enough, you have some things here. And then you have the terrain effect chart all by itself on this other side. So you have to keep flipping, which is strange, where they could have just printed it here. But after all, there isn't much that you need to remember, so once you learn the game, I don't think you'll need to use the player aid very often. You have two maps, one you already see here, and one is here. They're printed on paper, but in terms of playability and just, how pleasant they look, I think this is good lock and load quality. You have a bunch of counters, which are sturdy, good quality, probably the best components in the game. I like the way they look. I like the way the different values are printed in different colors from left to right. You have range, defense, and movement, and this probably will help a newer gamer learn the system. Rulebook, very short, good quality. The rules start at page 5, and they go on only until the very first paragraphs of page 12, so they're very short, a lot of examples, a lot of illustrations. It's going to be a very good tool for you when you're teaching the art of wargaming to a potential new wargamer, but also if you give the game to somebody, that person will be able to learn the game by him or herself very easily. In the end, you have some scenarios, you have 6 of them, of course, with such small maps, so many counters. Some of those kind of like look a little bit like the other ones. They're all armor heavy, and some actually are only armor. But in any case, there's still some variety, and they do play differently from one another. In order to move your pieces, to attack, or just to do anything on the board really, you will need to spend action points that will be given to you by these cheats that will be drawn from this pool. And these cheats have a number printed on them that is between 2 and 4. Now, the neat thing is that you don't draw your own cheats, but your opponent at the beginning of your turn will draw a cheat, look at the number, and then will keep it secret from you. So you start spending action points doing things on the map, but you do not know exactly how many you have. You have at least 2, but then you don't know if you're planning some grand strategy. Actually, you're not sure that you'll be able to execute it. It is a pretty neat, simple thing. I don't see any, problem understanding that rule, and yet it creates some quite interesting situations. You can spend an action point to move one of your units independently up to the value printed on the counter, or you can spend that same action point to activate a headquarter. Headquarters are the units that have their name underlined. In that case, one action point allows you to activate the headquarter itself and all units that are adjacent. Then they can move in different directions, but they have to be adjacent at the beginning of the movement. And it's very simple, but it allows you to exemplify the concept of command, range, headquarter, all concepts that are so important in so many war games. Spending an action point will also allow you to fire at one target with as many units as you want and can, of course taking into account line of sight and range. So in this case, for example, these 3 units all have range and line of sight on this unit here, so with one action point you'll be able to attack with all 3. And the attack is very simple. You roll 2 dice and then you apply modifiers, the most important of which is precisely the number of units that are firing against the target. Is +1 per firing unit. In this case, for example, you would have a +3. Then you have +1 in case you are occupying the flank of your enemy, and this would be the case. And so it's interesting, this game is simple, but it has facing and there will be some maneuvering because of this. And then you have -1 because of terrain in case the defender is occupying a town or a woods hex. Then so you roll the die, apply the modifiers, and if you got the number of the defense of the target or more, the target is destroyed. There is no step loss, there is no reduction, there is no recovery, they're just gone. So actually, as you can see, the system is fast and brutal. You send your people in, they destroy or get destroyed, which of course makes the luck factor pretty considerable. I don't know if some gamers will be annoyed by this. Well, and since the board is set up like this, I'm going to give you an example of what I meant before by how tricky the action points can be. Suppose that this is the situation and you are the German player. In this case, this group here does not have a line of sight on the target because of the town, and this group here is, well, these 2 guys are out of range, and this guy doesn't have a line of sight because of the hill. So you spend an action point to position this group here. Oh, they don't have a headquarter. Here we go. So with the headquarter, you move them all, you position them there. Now, if you attack, you spend another action point, you have a +3. And you are sure that you can do that because 1 for movement, 1 for attack. You always have 2. However, at least 2. However, you can spend your second action point after you maneuver to move this other group. And in this case, you can move them like this, for example. Maybe even like this, and now actually everybody will be able to attack that guy. You have a +6, but that's the point. You consumed your 2 action points that you can take for granted. Do you have a third action point or don't you? Because if you don't, somebody else might take advantage of that and start advancing against your flank, and things will get pretty bad. If you're not too bothered by the quality of the components, which is definitely lower than what Lock and Load has got us used to, Tank on Tank is a little game, is a nice little game. It does deliver what it promises, which is to give you a approachable, fast-paced, action-packed, tactical experience that can be played in an hour or less and can really be played by non-war gamers and maybe even by non-gamers. I was surprised by how it plays well as a solitaire game. It's an interesting little puzzle. Of course, in that case, you do not draw your own action sheets because then you would know how many points you have, but there's a special rule. You get your 2 free actions and then you roll a die to see if you get a third action or a fourth action, so that actually reproduces pretty well the level of uncertainty that you have in the 2-player game. Bottom line, again, it is a nice game, it is a fun game, it is very non-war gamer friendly. I managed to play with my wife, and to me, having a word game that also doubles as a play with your spouse game is a major selling point. So, Tank on Tank, Lock and Load game. Give it a try, it's fun.